is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Those of you that have been listening for some time to me on LBC will know that last year I became very involved in the Charlie Gard case, the little boy who had a critically ill condition, but the opportunity to go to America for some radical new treatment. Absolutely no guarantee that that treatment would have worked, but that was very much what the parents wanted to do. No cost of a state, the cost of the flights, the treatment, everything was covered, but doctors, the medical profession, politicians, the courts, all got together. The establishment got together to say, no, the final decision of the doctors in this country, that is it. Charlie Gard can't go to America. And Donald Trump tweeted about it. The Vice President tweeted about it. And indeed, after Charlie Gard died, in fact, Vice President Pence did meet the parents. Well, this week, we've had the Alfie Evans case, a similar case in many ways. Little boy, 23 months old, with a very rare condition. Doctors in this country deciding there was nothing more that could be done. But a hospital associated actually with the Vatican in Italy that looks after very sick children thought they might be able to do something. But it hasn't quite worked out that way. To help us through the timeline, the story, what's happened here, how the public have responded, how the authorities have responded, is Michael Gaffney, LBC's reporter, who's been following all of this. Michael, good morning.
Morning, Nigel. Hope you're well.
Yeah, I am well. I'm well, but I'm vexed because I do actually think that if parents want to take a child somewhere else for treatment, they should be able to do so. But in this case, Michael, how much treatment? I mean, had Alfie Evans basically been in a hospital almost since he was born?
Very nearly. He went into hospital in December 2016. He was 8 months old,
yeah,
and he stayed there for another 15 months. So the vast majority of his life, he'd been suffering seizures, the cause of which was a massive degenerative breakdown of his brain, the cause of which has never been successfully diagnosed, and that's sort of the crux of the disagreement in this case between the parents and the hospital. 70% of his brain matter just disappeared, obliterated. He lost the capacity to see, to smell, to even touch. His senses were gone. He wasn't capable really of any level of consciousness. But because there was never a definitive diagnosis of what had caused this, his parents were never ready to make that decision to say, actually, our son is terminally ill. How can we say that without a conclusive diagnosis? Mm-hmm. And that was the whole reason why they wanted to take him to potentially other hospitals overseas, like Giuseppe Bambino in Rome, where maybe further analysis could be carried out.
And why do hospitals like Alder Hey, or in the case of Charlie Gard, Great Ormond Street, why do they seem to be so opposed to parents taking a child to a different country?
Well, the issue here is where parental rights stand in the law relating to the individual rights of the child. Now, I don't think anyone's disputing that the staff at Alder Hey, who work very hard and who have saved more children's lives than either of us could count, had Alfie's best interests at heart. But they'd reached a point where they were convinced, even though they couldn't diagnose exactly the cause of what was wrong with him, that he wasn't going to have any quality of life, and that it would have actually been a cruelty to impose continuing to exist on him. That was their judgment call. Now, Alfie's parents argued that they had the right as parents to say what was best for him, but as it currently stands in UK law, the individual rights of a child as a patient override the rights of what parents or other people involved might feel.
And yet, Michael, let's imagine another Alfie Evans, but the difference being the parents are multimillionaires and the child's in a private hospital somewhere in West London. I'm pretty sure that in that case they'd have been able to fly the child to Italy.
I'm not so sure that's the case, because I don't think the financial aspects of it affect the legal decision making, and in fact, because of the the attention that this case drew and the work of the supporters who call themselves Alfie's Army.
Yes.
I mean, the parents are sat on a crowdfunding budget of more than 100 grand now.
So it's not the money. OK, fine. And Alfie's Army, I mean, I saw this remarkable picture, Michael, and you must have witnessed it, of about 20 police officers in high-vis jackets outside Alderhay Hospital. And I wasn't sure, was that to stop Alfie's parents taking him out, or was it to stop protesters getting in?
That was to stop protesters getting in, and at one stage they did try to get in. That was last week when things were getting particularly heated just before Alfie's ventilator was switched off. There were some really disgraceful, frankly, remarks being bandied round about Alderhay on social media. I mean, to say that a children's hospital is a death camp is not something that is acceptable in polite society. And yeah, the majority of the protesters who gathered outside the hospital were peaceful and followed the instructions to be peaceful and to be respectful, which the family, to their credit, consistently put out. Certain individuals intimidated staff members, verbally abused them, and that wasn't good to see.
No. OK. And finally, Michael, the life support machine was taken off. Alfie lived for another 4 or 5 days after that. Is there any reason the parents weren't allowed to take the child back home?
Well, that was discussed in court. I was at the final High Court Family Division hearing that was held in Manchester, and Justice Hayden, the judge who's been ruling on this from the start, that was his idea, was if we can at least come to some arrangement whereby Alfie can be taken home and at least end his days in the comfort of home, let's do that. I think the only reason that didn't happen in the end was just for technical reasons. Certain arrangements had to be made in terms of getting equipment and kit to their home. That takes some time, and unfortunately his time came to an end before those steps have been put in place.
No. OK. Michael, thank you very much indeed for talking us through that. That was Michael Gaffney, LBC's reporter, who's followed the Alfie Evans case over the last couple of weeks. Look, even if all the doctors agree, and this case did sound pretty hopeless, do you know something? Doctors aren't always right. All the doctors agreed on my medical condition in 1987, about 5 or 6 of them that I'd seen. And in the end, I got really, really tired with their answers. So do you know what I did? I went off separately to a different hospital for a second opinion, and within 24 hours, I was on the operating table having a cancer removed. All right? So don't tell me doctors are always right. I know they're not. And what about Aisha King, the 8-year-old boy from Southampton, a few years back, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 2014, who had a rare form of brain cancer. There was nothing more doctors in this country could do. The parents wanted to get him to Europe to have a new proton therapy. And you know, medical science moves at different speeds in different parts of the world. They were told, no, you can't do it. They thought, the hell with it. They got on an aeroplane. Do you know when they landed in Europe, the parents were put in prison for taking their child off to get alternative health care. As the father said, we feel we're being treated like terrorists. In the end, the child, Aisha King, got the treatment, and 4 years on, the child is still alive. Doctors aren't always right. But even if they are right, ultimately, who owns our children? Is it us, or is it the state? And in this case, very clearly, it appears to be the state, and I believe that to be wrong. And I've seen with this Alfie Evans case, the establishment clubbed together in the most extraordinary way. The Pope, the Pope had met the father, a private jet was laid on, it would have been a 2-hour flight to Rome to receive treatment. That may or may not have worked, but I put it to you, any of you out there that have ever been a parent, if you had a sick child, you would want to do everything you humanly could to help that child. And if that's denied to you, that is a very cruel thing to do to those parents for all the rest of the years to come. That's how I feel about it. Let me know what you think. If you think I'm wrong, call me on 0345 6060973. Maybe you think I'm right, and parental responsibility means a new law is needed in this country. A new law, just as in America they have what's called a try anything law that allows parents to do this. Maybe you think we need that, in which case Text to 84850. Any other comments you've got, tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and you can watch us on Facebook and comment there too on this very, very emotive case. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:14. It's a contentious subject, but ultimately it seems to me that unless you are causing undue suffering to a child, parents should have the final right to decide on a new form of treatment, even if it's in a different country. But boy, don't the establishment club together in this country. You know, I made the comment that I think the state is all too powerful through politics, the medical profession and the courts. Some of the responses I've had back are quite astonishing. Dr. Ben Janaway on Twitter said Nigel Farage should face criminal charges for his abusive and manipulative libel at the expense of the NHS. So criminal charges I should face, apparently, for saying parental rights should be above state rights in terms of a child. And fascinatingly, the Pope Francis took a personal interest in this case, met with the father, said he very much wanted Alfie to come to Rome to have this treatment, and after the little boy died, he said, I am deeply moved by the death of little Alfie. So you would expect, would you not, Cardinal Nichols, the senior Roman Catholic priest in the United Kingdom, to support the Holy Father? Not a word of it. No. In Britain, the establishment club together. I find the whole thing quite remarkable. I think we need a change in the law. I think the Americans with a try-anything law have got this right. That is my view. Richard is calling from Hackney. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning. So, is it right that the state can make a decision that the child should not go somewhere else for treatment?
I think that parents should have the option, as anyone should have the option about what they should do with their own, future, I guess, in terms of medicine. My feeling is that there is a restriction to do with money. The financial industry, the medical industry, the pharmaceutical industry is the most lucrative industry, or one of the most lucrative industries in the world.
Uh-huh.
They have to protect their income, essentially. The three forms of cancer. You were talking about cancer earlier, so I'm kind of going to go along that line at the moment. The three treatments for cancer is chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery. And if one person comes up with a treatment that's more effective than those, all of those billions of pounds that are pumped into the pharmaceutical companies to research drug therapies for that condition will be moved away and be directed towards one person. They cannot let somebody else, another organisation, doesn't matter where they are, treat cancer in a way that's more effective.
So it's the vested interest, Richard. That's the argument you're making.
I believe so.
Yeah, no, I'm listen, all through the history of humankind, progress gets stopped by vested interests. One of the reasons Wilberforce took 25 years to abolish slavery wasn't because people didn't agree with him morally, but the vested interests that were making money out of it didn't want it to happen. And if you were making vast amounts of money from a drug, you'd be very loath to accept something new would come along. But Richard, how would you feel if you were these parents and you'd been offered and the chance to get a private jet straight to Rome to get this treatment, and that had been denied to you? Isn't that just wrong?
It's wrong. There's no reason why. If a treatment doesn't have any side effects and it's not going to be harmful, and
Yes.
they've been denied any further treatment by the medical profession here,
Yes.
why can they not go and seek the treatment?
Absolutely. Does the law need to change?
It does need to change, but we need to work out who the law is. Who are the people making this law? And I bet you that the government organisation in charge of it are in bed with the pharmaceutical companies, are in fact part of a conveyor belt that, people work for the pharmaceutical companies. They then go and work for
Do you know, Richard, you sound like President Trump. Because this is the sort of criticism that Trump lays at the pharmaceutical industries and the costs charged for.
Even he as a president can't change it. So there's obviously something.
Yeah, no, you make the point very well. Thank you very much indeed. No, thank you. Nigel, parents don't have a right to cause suffering to a child after a judge hears medical evidence to say that this will happen, says Gary. Gary, look, I do understand this. If the parents are making a choice that would put the child through huge, unnecessary extra suffering, I do understand that. I'm just not quite sure I heard that argument in this case. You know, it would have been a 2-hour flight, but I understand the point you make. Look, this is not easy either way. Ultimately, it's who owns our kids? Do we as parents own our kids, or does the state own our kids? That, to me, is the debate. Jackie is calling from Greenwich. Good morning, Jackie.
Hello, Nigel. I wanted to say, when people are calling for changes in the law,
Yep.
they have to be very aware that extraordinary, unusual cases make bad law. For instance, the law as it stands, there are some religions, for example, Jehovah's Witnesses, where blood transfusions
Yes.
are regarded as not correct.
Yes.
And doctors frequently have to go to court when they fail to persuade to enable them to be able to give the blood transfusions to the child.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is, and I would say that the current law is pretty straightforward, parents don't own their children because children have human rights, and those human rights are enshrined in law. So, for instance, you cannot decide to send your child out to work at the age of 14. You cannot abuse your child. Now, I will in no way accuse the parents, in the current case, of abusing their child. I would say extreme love, extreme concern, care. But I would say all the arguments have had a chance to be aired in court. Now, you're convinced that it's some kind of establishment conspiracy. Well, I'm certainly not.
Well, Jackie, I do find it.
But I'm on their side over this.
I do find it extraordinary, Jackie, that the Pope can speak as vociferously on this subject as he does, and yet the senior Roman Catholic priest in this country says nothing. I find that extraordinary.
Well, as I say, I'm not a Roman Catholic, so I really don't know. But as you say, I can remember. I do come from a family where there is Roman Catholicism involved, and I can remember that my father was asked in the case of my mother by a doctor, should they save the child or the mother? And the advice from my mother's priest was at odds with what my father believed. He said preferably both, but the mother.
Yes, very difficult, isn't it? Very.
And what I'm saying is, when it comes down to it, these issues are not simple.
No, they're not. No, Jackie, they're not.
And of this country is they were able to go to court and have the arguments listened to.
I just feel it feels to me like the state owns our kids, and I take your point, about owning children and human rights. I take the point, Jackie. I thank you for your passion, and the point about the Jehovah's Witnesses is a very, very strong counter-argument that says actually parents can make very bad decisions sometimes. What an extraordinary thing to say, I get on Twitter. No one owns a child; they are their own person, which is why the law has to step in from time to time to protect their interests. Well, okay, but a 23-month-old can't make their own decisions. Therefore, actually, we go back to the state, don't we? Actually, we go back to the fact the state has control over this. The Americans do have a try-anything law. I am tempted by that. Jordan is calling from Belfast. Good morning.
How you doing, Nigel?
Yeah, I'm all right. I just feel very sorry for these parents, and I can't believe the way the state comes together, whether it's in this case or the Charlie Gard case, and anyone that dares question it gets abused.
Exactly. I mean, I wasn't even aware of the American law that you stated before, the try-anything law. Yeah.
It means that you can move a child from state to, the doctors in your state can say that's it, there's no more we can do, we recommend life support's taken off, and you say, well, actually, do you know what? We're going to go to Texas, because they've got something there that we want to try.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even a parent myself, but I mean, if I was to have a child, you would move heaven and earth. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous that the British government has decided basically that this child deserves to die. I mean, it's a very sad state of affairs, to be completely honest with you, and all I can really do is have sympathy for the parents. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I have sympathy for the parents, just as I had sympathy for Charlie Gard's parents, who I met during those last few very difficult weeks. But trouble is, Jordan, there are going to be more of these, aren't there, as the months and years go on?
Oh, no, it's not going to stop, especially with, well, I don't know. I'm trying not to be pessimistic, but I don't see a bright side. This is just going to get worse and worse and worse, and especially with the more power that the state has, the worse it's going to get.
That, Jordan, you've summed up my feeling on this. The state has too much power. Thank you. Matt from Sidcup says, it's pretty shameful to be hijacking this case just so you can have a pop at the establishment, as you frame it. Matt, I'm not hijacking this case. I'm being utterly consistent in all of these cases. I think the state has too much power. I think parental rights matter, and I think parental rights have been trampled on in this case. And it's extraordinary, Matt. You know, and I haven't criticised the doctors for their treatment. I've just said that medical science can move at different speeds in different parts of the world. Look, Matt, please, at the Aisha King case from 4 years ago. You know, they were put in prison for taking him off for a new form of treatment that did actually work. And yet when I make this argument, I get told I should face criminal charges by some in the medical profession. The state has too much power, folks. We need some kind of change in the law. I'm not pretending I've got that legislation yet drafted, but I do think we need to have a debate about it. Please agree with that, disagree with that. 0345 6060 973. Rebecca, yet another first-time caller from Southend. Good morning.
Good morning. So I'm a paediatric nurse.
Aha.
I've been a paediatric nurse for the last 5 years. I've worked in big hospitals and smaller ones, so I've seen these situations happen a lot. And I think the problem we're having here is that people are putting these parents' rights above their children's rights. I really sympathise with the parents, I do, and I have a 2-year-old who's just kind of I have a 2-year-old at home who, if she was in the situation, I can't say exactly how.
Oh, well, there we are.
How I would feel.
You gave the prompt, and the listeners all heard. So,
however, these children are going through a lot of pain. So, in the Alfie situation, if he was taken to Italy, the invasive procedures that he would have to have would be very painful and would only prolong his life. There is no cure for Alfie.
Yeah. So was it right then, Rebecca, and you've got experience of this, was it right then that the parents were stopped from carrying out their wishes?
Yes, it was.
OK, Rebecca, thank you very much indeed. Rebecca, a paediatric nurse who believes there was no hope at all for little Alfie and therefore the right decision was made. Medically, that may well be right. I just do not like the power of the state and the way they all club together and nobody is even allowed to criticise. Something wrong there, in my view. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It is now 11:30. From the Charlie Gard case last year through to the Alfie Evans case this year, I do think that if I was a parent and there was a small chance that there was some other treatment that could be found, I would want to take it. And I bet almost all of you listening to this show would feel the same way. I get by text, Nigel, I'm with you 100%. Parents should have the right to explore medical treatment in other countries. If my child had only 1% chance of survival, then that is hope. Isn't that how all of us would feel? Now, it may well be in this case, medically, it was impossible. But I would remind you, doctors are wrong. I know that because I'm still here. If I'd stuck with the team I'd had, I wouldn't have been here. Pauline on Facebook says his parents should have had that choice, even if it didn't work. Linda says it doesn't stop other countries getting help to this country. Linda, you'd have thought so, wouldn't you? But here goes with the Charlie Gard case. He was going to be taken across to a hospital in the Midwest of America to get treatment. He was stopped from doing so. In the end, the Americans said, that's fine, no problem. We'll fly to the UK and administer the treatment here. Oh no, that wasn't allowed because it wasn't a drug already on our registered list. So whichever way you cut this, to try and give people new and experimental treatment, if it comes from overseas, it seems the establishment stops it from happening. And earlier on, caller said it could be the pharmaceutical industry. I don't know. I just see it as the big state, the all-powerful state, being simply too powerful. But, some don't agree. Have you lost your marbles, Nigel? Alfie couldn't hear, smell or see. His brain was almost non-existent. Even if he could be saved, who'd want to be like that? Well, actually, if he felt nothing, then the argument that Karen makes that he was too ill to travel doesn't really apply. If he wasn't feeling anything, what was to be lost by doing it? Roya is calling from Swindon. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Nigel.
Hello there. So,
It's Maria, actually. But
is that, well, we've had a few spelling problems this morning. Maria, hello.
Hello.
Now, tell me, do you think the right decision was made in this case?
In this case, I agree.
Okay.
But what if you get an instance that the child is of a faith that doesn't believe in blood transfusions? So if we let that case go and say, yes, the parents got a right to say what happens to children, so if you're in a faith that doesn't believe in blood transfusion and that child is going to die because it doesn't have a blood transfusion, and they have the right to say yes or no to it. So that's where you've got to be very careful.
Yep, and that's a religious issue, isn't it?
Exactly. So if we say a law saying that a parent's got a right to the decision of what a child does, I totally agree what you're saying.
Yep.
Get me wrong on that one, I totally agree with that. But if we allow it, then you're going to have Mormons who don't believe in blood transfusion. They might have a small child or whatever sort of, a relation or something like that, who doesn't believe in blood transfusion, and their faith is no blood transfusion, so that child will die. How would we stand there?
Well, at the moment, we have the power to override the parents' wishes, don't we? Although we may have to go to court to do it. So you're arguing, Maria, you're arguing that if this new piece of law came into being, it could actually be counterproductive.
It could be, yeah.
No, okay. Look, do you know what? I take that point. I understand that point. I said earlier, I haven't drafted the legislation, but I do know in America, had American parents faced this situation, they would have been able to make their own decision, Maria, and in this case, they weren't.
Totally agree, Nigel. Exactly what you're saying. I'm on your side on that side.
But you've seen
the thing is, the different side of it, you've got another side to it.
Yeah.
So if you let one thing happen, then another thing may happen as well.
No, you've made the point beautifully, thank you. Blood transfusions, it's a very, very strong point. John says, the state owns all of us in one form or another. Well, boy, isn't that clear from this story. I was told by 5 different doctors that I had a kidney infection. The 6th doctor I saw said it was gallstones. Within half an hour, it was dealt with. Bev, do you know, I made the point earlier, I was misdiagnosed horrendously back in 1987. If I'd stuck with the medical establishment, I would not be here. And what about Aisha King? Told the little boy wasn't allowed to travel to Europe. They travelled to Europe anyway. The parents get arrested and put in prison, and 4 years on, the boy is alive and well. Don't tell me the medical establishment is always right, because it isn't always right. It can't possibly ever always be right. Bill is calling from the Costa del Sol. Bill, we've got, they're talking about snow here, possibly, in the northeast of England. 50-mile-an-hour winds and rain in the south. What's it like on the Costa del Sol?
Very nice, about 23, 24 at the moment, just getting a bit higher.
That's going to really, really cheese people off as they're soaked going about their business today. So, Bill, tell me, how do you feel about this?
What is, I feel very bad about it. I feel someone should sue the government for unlawful killing.
Wow. That's a bit strong, isn't it?
My father died at the similar situation. He died of asbestos. And when I got his records, there was something in the records saying not to resuscitate him, and it's a code called 333.
Right.
It's 4 3s they put on your file. So if you go to the hospital now and they say, you've got cancer or you've got asbestos or whatever, they put on your file not to resuscitate you.
Yeah.
They could put that today, and in a year's time, a nurse will look at it or a doctor will look at it. And they say, don't help this person, keep them comfortable, give them some morphine. And basically, they're killing people. And I had an heart attack in Spain, like this year. I went over in the street, I collapsed, and I was rushed to the hospital here, and I had an heart attack. And they saved me life.
Well, but Bill, equally that could have happened in the UK too, couldn't it? And you know, I've
been dead.
You know. Well, I don't know. Bill, you know, I've suffered at the hands of the NHS, but equally, when I've had my plane crashes and car smashes and all the various things I've had in my mixed life, when I was an absolute emergency, I've been looked after very, very well. Bill, I thank you very much indeed for your call. Alfie and his parents should have been allowed to go to Italy. Should have been allowed to. For me to even have to write these words, yeah, you're right, the state is just simply too powerful. If what the parents are proposing in terms of medical care is detrimental to the interest and welfare of the child, then the authorities must step in. Now, that would be the right way round, wouldn't it? If what the parents were proposing really was wrong, then the authorities would step in. As it is, they have the absolute right from the beginning, and it's for the parents to make the case to get the child to go elsewhere. And even when drugs can be brought in from America to treat a child, we're told that can't happen because it's not on the list. This is a classic case. This almost is more about the size of a state than it is about this child who sadly died's medical condition. Nino is calling from Ely in Cambridgeshire.
Hello, Nigel.
Hello there.
Yeah, normally I agree with you. On this case, I can't.
All right.
The first point is not the state that makes the decision; it's judges that make the decision.
All right. Well, all right, Nino. Let me try you on this. State-appointed judges. It's still the state, isn't it?
Okay, you've got to have some faith in our judiciary, or otherwise we may as well hang up and go home.
All right.
You've got to. In the end, someone has got to make a decision.
Yep.
Yeah, and our law works that if no consensus can be made, then it goes to the judiciary, who will make an informed decision in the interest of the child. Yeah. So it's not the state making decisions or doctors making decisions. Isn't
really the truth of it that the judges just rubber stamp what the doctors tell them?
Well, let's hope not. Let's be kind to them and say they've got to, they show some initiative and actually think about the arguments being made to them. Yeah, you've got to have some faith in the judiciary. I mean, otherwise,
but the trouble is that the judiciary can only judge the arguments put to them.
If the judges don't make the decision, who does?
No, I understand that, but the judges listen to the medical arguments, and all the medical arguments say this shouldn't happen.
Yeah,
but what about parents' rights?
Yeah, of course they've got rights, but in the end, someone's got to speak for someone who cannot speak for themselves. Someone's got to speak on their behalf, where they're looking at it with their interests at heart. And you can't say parents always have the child's interests at heart. That's rubbish.
Well, I think in most cases they do. There will be the odd exception where it's the other way around. But the judges are always going to be part of the establishment that rules in favour of the establishment. That's just the way it works.
Then what would your solution be? I mean, in the end, I'm make a decision.
I'm proposing. I'm not proposing. I mean, others have proposed, and I'm supporting the idea that we need to have a change in the law. Now, look, I'm not pretending it's easy, because the counter-argument's been made about parents who would deny their children normal medical treatment, but I think there needs to be a shift in emphasis. That's really all I'm saying. But look, thank you for your call. Yes, ultimately, we do have to judge the courts, but the courts are part of that establishment machinery. That's how I see it. Nigel, having been both a patient, a nurse, and a medical secretary, I know what mistakes are made in hospital treatments. Of course, parents should be allowed to further treatment for their child, wherever it may be. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:45. Could it be that the medical establishment actually is frightened of the concept that patients could go elsewhere and get treatment that's not yet available here? Would that put them in a bad light? I don't know. Seems to me that science, of course, moves at different speeds and in different places. I do wonder whether there is an element of that to it. Les, another first-time caller from Brentwood. Good morning, Les.
Good morning.
So what's your perspective on this?
Nigel, I think the point you just made, I think I agree with that on the whole. But my point is, I think a lot of people are missing the main point. We're not leaving this down to some parents who might have religious ideals, or they might be idiots or whatever. We're saying that in England, a hospital has said, we can't do anything more for your child. We want to turn off his life support.
Yes.
And these parents have scouted around the world and found another hospital that says, we think we can have a go and maybe we can help him. Why the hell can't he be released?
Do you know what, Les? That's the most... that, to me, is just good, plain, common sense. I absolutely agree with that. And yet, yeah, we're frightened almost, aren't we, of allowing patients to go abroad and get other treatment. What's wrong with us?
I know. It happened with Alfie Guard. It's happened with this chap. And I've been boiling all week watching it. And I was really... I was boiling most when Piers on breakfast television, he's normally really outspoken, and he kept really quiet about this, and I really don't know why.
I know why, Les. Because if you criticise the medical establishment, they're not used to it. You know, you get big TV debate programmes, and something about the NHS comes up, and everyone says the doctors and nurses in the NHS are wonderful. End of conversation, move on. You're not allowed to criticise them at all. And when I criticise them collectively with the big state, I'm told by doctors on Twitter that I should face criminal charges. Maybe Piers didn't want the aggro.
And if they could get you into court, they would. And thank Christ that there are people like you that do actually, you stick yourself in front of these problems, even though you might get... in trouble for it. And so I'm with you all the way on this, Parents, them poor parents.
Yeah, I know. So you've really, Les, this case has really emotionally affected you, yeah?
Oh, and I've never, this is the first time I've phoned in ever. I was sitting in my car, and I can't believe people are phoning up saying, we've got to leave this to judges. Judges administer the law. How can a judge know more than the hospital in Italy that says we think we might be able to do something?
I know. Les, thank you. First time caller there, felt so moved he pulled the car over and called us. What on earth do you think is in this for the benefit of the establishment in making this decision? There is no benefit for anyone apart from potentially the child, which means an end to its suffering, says Tom, a dad in Charlton. Well, the benefit... Tom, is that you have a situation where everyone closes ranks and we're not allowed to criticise the medical profession in any way at all. And effectively, if you get thinking like that, you're not in the right place. Everybody, whether we're in a profession, a religion, whatever it may be, we're all open to criticism, and that should absolutely be right. Karen says the right decision at the time was made by the judge, but if it had been earlier, it may have been different. No, Karen, it would have been exactly the same. It would have been exactly the same. If this child was in that state, I don't think any different court judgment would have come from it. Mark is calling from Leeds. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. I just kind of wanted to sort of come against some of the arguments that have been coming up from some of the callers where they're suggesting that this hospital in Italy could have provided treatments. I work in a cancer centre in Yorkshire.
Yes.
And the treatment that they were offering in Italy was not treatment, it was just an alternative package of care that would have led to the same outcome in the end anyway. So in terms of offering a last hope, there was, unfortunately in this case, no hope for this particular child. Now, some of the other cases that you've referenced, so I work as part of an oncology unit that are trialling new viruses and bacteria as treatments for cancers. So one of the previous callers suggested that it's all a monopoly about the pharmaceutical companies. When we're coming up with new things all the time, it's just that this is the best that we have.
Yeah.
The argument's made that it's closing ranks and with refusing treatment. And so you gave the example of the Aisha King.
I did.
The drugs coming over from America.
That was the Charlie Gard case, Mark, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, of course, yeah. So it's not that we don't allow new drugs to come over, it's just that it has to go through a process where it's regulated. So even in the Alfie Evans case, there was treatments being offered from China that came from very, very questionable places, and saying that just because it comes from a hospital abroad, then it's better than what we're offering here and has been regulated and has gone through National Institute of Clinical Excellence.
Mark, I don't want to criticise you for the work you do at all. All I've argued is it not possible that medical science and advancements move at different paces in different parts of the world.
Of course they do. For example, I mean, I'm not trying to big up the NHS because there are other places that are focusing on other things, and there's some fantastic work going on in Australia at the moment. But some of the treatments that we're using here are groundbreaking and the first places in the world to use them.
Yeah.
Saying that the Vatican and a hospital in Rome that has been funded by a Christian evangelist American lady who heard about the Alfie Evans case, got in touch with this hospital within the Vatican, and then flew and moved to Liverpool to try and instigate this change and bring up an upswelling of evangelicals in America. That is not going to be the most groundbreaking treatment and hospital in the world. What they were offering is in no way superior to what would have been offered on the NHS or anywhere else in this country.
Okay, and Mark, as somebody working in cancer, Aisha King, and I've talked about this already a couple of times, Aisha King, was an 8-year-old boy, and was told, his parents were told not to leave the country, not to go for this alternative proton therapy, and they got put in prison for taking him out of the country. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so I think that whole case was carried out particularly poorly, obviously, and I think the difficulty with the proton therapy is that there is some reasonably good evidence behind it, but there's also a lot of sort of misinformation surrounding it. So I think in that particular case, things should have been a lot more transparent and thought about it. Because, the difficulty that you have with cancer is that there's over 200 forms of cancer, and one cancer to another could be as different as you and I are from a daffodil. So when people are coming on and saying that there's a cure for cancer and we're hiding it somehow, it's just ridiculous, because one thing wouldn't fix one and the other. So it is very complicated, and I do agree that the Aisha King could have been handled better.
But do you understand my argument that parental choice ultimately in a free society is a very important thing?
I do and I don't. So, for example, nowadays I predominantly work with adults, but I used to work with paediatrics, and there's such... People cling on to hope. So recently I have a lady who's in her mid-50s and her son is 27, and she's got end-stage lung cancer. She is expected to pass away within the next month or two, but her son refuses to believe it. And this is a grown man and it's his mother, and it's not a child that we're considering. And often, sadly, people switch off to what they want to hear and what they understand. And I'm completely sympathise with the plight of the parents wanting to do everything they can, but unfortunately, it reaches a point where the information, the knowledge depth, and what a parent or an individual is willing to accept and take in terms of what they'll accept about the diagnosis, they will make bad decisions because they're constantly under stress and under anxiety and fear.
Yeah. No, understood. Listen, Mark, great call and great work you do. Keep doing it, please. Thank you very much indeed. The hospital in Rome was only offering palliative care, and given there was a 0% chance of recovery, I would argue the decision that was made was morally correct, said Jamie from Putney, a point that Mark very much was just making. Clearly, in the Charlie Gard case, that wasn't. This was a supposedly revolutionary new drug that was going to be used. One of the big problems with this debate is you get involved with each individual case, you get a different argument. There was Mark, a cancer expert, agreeing with me that the Aisha King case had been handled badly. So sometimes the emotion of each individual case perhaps makes it more difficult to think about the whole. But the whole is parents need to have more rights than they've currently got. That is what I feel. I wonder what Natasha feels about that. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, to be honest, I've been listening to this for a while now in the car, and I can't believe it. I'm honestly so infuriated by the whole thing. And to be honest, to me, it just comes across that this is all about money at the end of the day. Why could this boy have not been flown out?
Well, actually, Natasha, money? No. There was a private jet. Ready to take little Alfie from, I guess it would have been Manchester, or perhaps someone even nearer, straight to Rome. The care would have been... Money was not a factor in this at all. This was a decision that had been made, backed up by the courts, with virtually nobody, even Cardinal Nichols, not supporting the Holy Father, and that was it. And this is what happens in these cases. The medical establishment makes a decision, no one dares ever criticise anything they do, and that's the end of it.
I think it's disgusting. And the call that was just last on there, he was talking about different treatments. You know, this treatment might not work for one person, it might work for another person. Well, it's funny how they can sort of pick and choose which cases to use the ideology on. You know, they're still giving children, at the end of the day, chemotherapy that does just as bad things to them as it may do good, but you still do it
Well,
because there's a chance of saving a life.
Yeah. You know, it's look, Natasha, I'm not. You know, I haven't tried to condemn the entire medical profession, far from it. There's good and bad in the medical profession, as there is in every other walk of life. Natasha, thank you very much indeed for your call. Thank you, all of you, for your calls, and a lot of passion, a lot of emotion. Yeah, you know, I know the chances of that little boy recovering were just about zero, but frankly, I think the way parents actually get treated in these cases, there's something wrong. I would like to see some form of legal amendment. I can't pretend I know exactly what it is. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock. At 3 this afternoon, it's Andrew Castle. But coming up next, it's Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Nigel.